a crazy match, and yeah, it was a pretty intense match. And they were painting the walls here, so I was a little freaking out. But anyway, it's all good now. So let's get started. So first, if you can briefly describe your role in terms of oversight and responsibilities. How many colleagues work with you or for you, and how does it fit in the overall scale of multinational like Johnson & Johnson?
Okay, no problem. Mary Chaney, I'm the director of the Security Operations Center for Johnson & Johnson, Global Security Operations Center. I have about 15 employees that work directly for me, with about 7 or so contractors in Romania. We are located in Raritan, New Jersey. I have one of my employees who will remain nameless, who's in the house today. So the areas of responsibility that we have, the way our Security Operations Center works, we, of course, have typical L1, L2 activities in regards to triaging events. In addition to that, we have a cyber incident management group. We are also aligned, specifically with the kill chain. We have an intel group. I have about 4 or 5 folks that are actually specifically do intelligence gathering and running of indicators of compromise. Then, of course, we have policy management on firewalls, rule management on IDS, IPS, on our actual network itself. So,
perfect. So, is information security an area that has a solid lineup to Johnson & Johnson top executives?
Yes, it does. So as a director, I work for a senior director who works for the CISO. Our chief information security officer is Maureen Allison. She, I actually have been with her all day. We just came down from New Brunswick. We have a women's leadership in IT event that are going on concurrently. So David got me first, so I had to skip out on that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So yes, it has very high visibility. With Maureen, she's the vice president of worldwide information security. So
perfect. And so one of the things that I noticed in the past 3 years I've been running this organization is the fact that it's pretty much a male dominant area. So all the executives that were here are male, so happen to be, and so I insisted, and Mary was very kind. So do you think the level of attention is appropriate for, given the observation you've had in the past year or so in the organization in terms of the oversight to senior management?
Yeah, I think, just to touch on the women's leadership part, yes, you're right. Male-dominated field, as you can tell, if you look around. But, everything that I've done in my career has been male-driven. I'm, IT background by trade and an attorney, former special agent with the FBI, so I've been dealing with men for a long time. Yeah, for better or for worse. Yes, definitely. But I see a lot of women leaders coming up. I think that things are changing for us in the corporate environment. I see Johnson & Johnson specifically in healthcare leading that charge and development of women leaders. So I think it's very important, and that's why I took the challenge that David laid down, that you guys need to know who's out there and who to connect with and who to see, so that's why I'm here.
So we had a short conversation prior to this interview, and I said, well, people don't typically get a chance to meet you. So Mary said, yeah, my door is open. It's just in the SOC operation, so no one can come and see me. It's a little problem. She said, if anybody comes see me, the alarm will go off. So can you describe the state of information security Johnson & Johnson when you observed as coming into the new role, and if anything changed in the past year or so?
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, information security in the healthcare industry itself, it's still lagging behind the other areas of other industries. For instance, the financial service sector's gotten this thing down pat, so to speak. I came from G Capital. So healthcare is lagging behind. I think that within Johnson & Johnson, I've only been with Johnson & Johnson for about 7 months now. Coming in the door, it's constant change when you're dealing with a corporate environment. So there was changes going on within my team, and consolidation of not only personnel but technology under the Security Operations Center umbrella. So the importance is there. I've gotten nothing but support from the leaders, from my senior director to the VPs and across to CTO, CIO. I've met with all of those people, for better or worse, depending on what I was talking about at the time. But having that visibility within an organization, coming in, I knew healthcare was in its infancy, just by nature of the business. When I owned my own business, healthcare clients were my major clients with HIPAA and things like that, not really understanding, the importance of securing that data. So Johnson & Johnson's huge. We have not only, the consumer products, we also have medical devices, and we have, it's a life sciences company more so than it is a healthcare company, but we do have regulatory compliance issues that we have to deal with, and those challenges are no different than anything else.
This is a great segue to the next question. So we're talking about such a large organization with multiple divisions. So in terms of the pace of change you've seen, did it match your expectations? Or, is that the same pace of change you would like to see?
He will remain nameless, but I have I challenge the folks on my staff to think creative and do different things creative. I think the pace of change in healthcare, just by nature of the industry, is slow. They've been slow to adapt. Technology, historically, as a patient, you can understand, you go to your doctor and you're trying to figure all of this stuff out, and it becomes as much data as they have about us as patients. They're not able to act any faster, which is mind-boggling. So I don't think I came in expecting it to move with the speed of light. I did not expect it to be as in its infancy as it really was when I took on the role. And so it's just bringing things around in structure and organizing things so you can move forward. And I think when I came in the door, it was more so me trying to develop that strategy, that overarching plan where we can now lay the foundation so we can move faster. And it is slow to begin, but I see positive results right now.
Okay. Thank you. So, even Johnson & Johnson talking about the brand, right? So I think every person in this room probably either used a product from Johnson & Johnson, has a product, from multiple different divisions. So it's such a global brand. So maybe, and we talked about briefly, is the fact that, global brand makes it a target, right? So maybe you can provide a short list of information security challenges or even threats that Johnson & Johnson faces.
Okay, so I have a question. There was one product that we made. We have now since sold the business, but there was one product that we made that I had no clue we made when I walked in the door. Splenda. Did you guys know Johnson & Johnson made Splenda? You had no clue. I had no clue, and I use Splenda every day, and I didn't know I had no clue. I came in and there was Splenda everywhere, and I'm like, and I'm in the meet. It was Splenda. Yeah. Splenda everywhere. I'm like, what is this? And they were doing the product lineup, and it said Splenda, and I'm like, really? We all split? Anyway, in regards to brand, we have, because we have 256 different operating companies, we're a holding company. Okay, so we have 256 different types of businesses that are reporting into the shared services model of the Security Operations Center, for instance. So, you look at it and you look at the diversity within those businesses, and you look at the information security challenges within that business, and what's most important. R&D is, when we start talking about R&D for immunization. If someone got a hold of, our formula to fight Ebola or whatever it may be, those typical challenges. And when you have all of these operating companies out there, and for better or worse, historically they haven't had, a reason to now report into a oversight and challenge function like information security should be and is. It becomes, we'll do what we want now, ask for permission later. And then, of course, I see them asking for permission later when they have a problem. But I think that the people that are trying to attack us are various. I mean, you have the typical Chinese, intellectual property, and then you have, how do you commoditize? How do you get a hold of that, that drug that you can add street value, and, then you have the fraud component. There's so many different challenges that you have from an information security perspective. And we have different people just specifically watching the brand, that was another thing that shocked me. I'm coming out of financial services, GE their brand is just as important to them, but it's even more important with Johnson & Johnson because it is a family of companies, and that, the consumer facing aspect of it, the brand protection. There's a whole group that does brand protection and watches things out there to ensure that no one is infringing upon that brand. So it was an amazing transformation or change of that when I came into Johnson & Johnson.
No doubt. So I mentioned previously that years ago in business school I've done a case study on Johnson & Johnson, and one of the things that came out was the fact that Johnson & Johnson as a company specifically picks leaders in every category. So they only pursue leaders 1 or 2 in the category, market leaders, and that's a strategy as an organization to go to market. So the question is, does it also apply to the culture within the organization as well as the approach to information security?
Have to be the best. 100%. Bottom line. End of discussion. Yes, it translates. It translates in leadership and the expectation of leadership for us to be the best. I drive that home, or at least I attempt to drive that home with my folks. I tell them all the time, I'm not going to solution how you do it. I'm going to tell you what I want, and I don't care how we get there. We just need to get there. And, using that creativity to get us there and those innovative ideas to get us there is important. So, yes, it translates. It translates in what we expect of ourselves as a company, and then it translates into to information security very much.
Great. So last question before I open up to this question from the crowd. So you have a tremendous background. You were law enforcement with the FBI, specifically in the information security space. So how that amazing background applies to your current position? I'm assuming that you take some of that experience and apply it in the corporate world, right? Maybe you can give us an idea of what's the difference, or what can you drive from having that amazing background?
There are a couple things I can share. The one thing that the FBI taught me, I tell this story often. It's when you hold a gun to someone's chest and you have the ability to take someone's life, it puts everything in perspective for you, right? So the one thing that the FBI said to me is, if you are looking at someone, that you have a gun. So there's always at least one gun in the room. So you better be darn sure if you pull it out that it's a real threat. So what that has taught me and what I've learned from that situation is my blood pressure goes down when there's something going on. And in incident response, that's a good thing. You don't want to, your hair can't be on fire. And, oh God, the sky's falling. You can't be that way. You have to be calm, and you have to be able to have the ability to think clearly under pressure and not make knee-jerk reactions. And that's something that I attribute directly with the FBI, because honestly, if right now, if something happened in this room, I guarantee you take my blood pressure. It's very, very low, because you have to be able to think when you're in that firefight. And that's very, very, very important. And then, the biggest thing the difference, I would say, between the government and private industry, and I say this often, in the government, for better or worse, don't start talking to me about OPM, please don't.
That was my next question.
I know. For better or worse, the government starts with the data. Okay, you can't build a building within the federal government without classification of the data that's going to be in that building, because the way you build that building is determined by the classification level. So they start with the data, and then you put protections around the data. Whether they're good or bad protections, we can be argued. The Chinese know me. They have my information, all of it, just based on the OPM breach. But in any event, corporate America is more so aligned with making money. And, you get out there, and that was one of the shocking things that in coming out of the government, they don't know where their data is. And so the issue is you can't do anything if you don't know where your data is. You can't put controls around an environment that you classify as highly restrictive, just mainly because you don't know where all your highly restricted data may be. And so that's the challenge, that, getting that mindset to change in corporate America is big data analytics. Just more and more and more and more. But, when you start talking about security and you're looking and you're like, okay, but what's the most important thing that we need to make sure, like the formula for, the next big vaccine, where is that? Please tell me, because I can protect that. But it's getting that information and getting people to tell you, okay, well, Mary, it's that server, that one right there. Don't let anybody in. I can deal with that. I can do that. But when you have a breach and you say, well, what data was on there? That's a problem. I get vendors all the time, as you guys can imagine, that, want to sell me a technology to solve my problems. You too. Now, they want to sell me a technology. I will tell you flat out when I investigated cybercrime, when the cybercrime squad and FBI, to when I worked with clients, when I was actually a consultant, to when I worked for GE Capital and was the director of incident management, now at the Security Operations Center. Companies shoot themselves in the foot more than someone else, based on a lack of the appropriate processes in place to protect it. If you follow the process, the technology does what it does. And I used to tell my clients that all the time. The technology is going to do what you ask it to do. So to answer your question directly, I don't necessarily know if the way technology can help us solve the problem is by trying to help us identify or go out and seek that data, but you still need the relationships within the business for them to tell you exactly what it is that they're trying to protect. Just, earlier this year I was at another event in DC where I was recruiting actually for and I'm going to say this, for about 3 roles that I have open. Please don't pass me resumes. But I was recruiting at the event, and we were actually talking about, essentially what it is that we need in regards to segmentation, network segmentation. You have to set up the necessary foundational elements that you need in order to set yourself up for success, because you cannot boil an ocean. As the incident response leader, as the director of the Security Operations Center, I can't boil the ocean. But what I can do is identify my threats, and I can actually point them in the right direction. And I can say, okay, if this is important to my business, if this is the top secret form, if this is the server, what I can say is there's no vulnerabilities on that server. Sorry, let's back up. So if it's web facing, there's no vulnerabilities on that web app. Okay, then we look at it and we say, okay, well, there's no vulnerabilities on the actual database that the actual information is sitting on, and then what I call storage, access, and transmitting, and actually having those channels directly related and actually secure will help you further and faster. But in corporate America, it's the identification of that is the challenge for us. That's not necessarily economically practical, especially on the enterprise level. you can't protect everything because you always will have the human element, the two-legged monster in the room that will hinder your efforts to do so. So, I mean, I think it in theory, if you're a small company, absolutely encrypt everything. But then you start looking at an enterprise level type of thing, it becomes that much harder and that much difficult. We're in 90 countries. There are certain legal requirements in EMEA. You can't encrypt certain. There are so many different things that you have to take into consideration. Where one size fits all just won't work for J&J.
Anybody else?
Hey, Thomas Stevenson with Standard & Poor's. I too was a SOC director on the government side, and I found it very challenging to keep, especially my junior folks, engaged and excited when they're sitting on console. Let's say it's Sunday night at 2 a.m. How do you? What's your leadership style? How do you keep your folks motivated to keep coming back to do the good work every day?
Well, within our Security Operations Center, we have the L1 sitting at the screen, outsourced to our MSSP. And so within the L2 capacity, all Johnson & Johnson employees, which are sitting in that L2 capacity, which takes a level of knowledge within to understand what's going on in our environment. So that's why we're structured that way. How do I keep my junior folks enthused? Just by getting them involved, man. You know what? The millennial generation, these guys are amazing. I mean, you bury them and they're wanting more. So, I mean, I'm serious. It's amazing how much they can absorb and they can actually just perform. And if you just give them, if you don't restrict them to how you want it done and let them creatively get it done, it's powerful. I'm really passionate about it. Yeah. I don't think they're bored. I really don't think they're bored.
So you have 15 people, right? Which is a pretty small team. So how do you manage the complexity of all the different security controls that a global company with 15 people?
Well, you're talking about. She basically asked me, I have 15, well, actually 21 if we count the L1s, and how do we manage the particular controls with such a small group? We don't. The controls portion sits outside of the Security Operations Center. The only thing we're managing are outputs of technology that we consider to be of interest. So, I mean, the controls function and reside within the Information Security Organization and led by our CISO. But actually testing, we have every little nuance that you would think corporate America, Johnson & Johnson has a single function that does that. So we have internal audit, we have, controls, testing, we have security awareness, that's outside. So this is not, the Security Operations Center is strategically focused on certain activities. So yes. In network defense, cyber network defense, yeah.
Last question, go ahead.
My question is basically, Steve at ISEC Partners, we hire probably, out of everyone in this room, we probably hire the most people a year, just in cybersecurity as a whole. And we compete against you guys, we compete against everybody for hiring. Everybody competes against everybody for hiring. It's a tough market out there. There's zero unemployment, and these kids are coming out with better offers than we got when we were getting into the game. How does JJ stay competitive with that?
We got long dollars. Well, I mean, honestly and truly, people don't leave Johnson & Johnson. So once they're in, and once you get that talent in the door, you invest in that talent, they're not going to leave. It's such a great company. It's such a great environment for work on. We don't have typical, I have co-ops that are still in college all the way up to 17 years and they work for Johnson & Johnson and anywhere in between. So it's a great company to work for. It's a great company to be involved in. So all you have to do is get them in the door and you train them and you get them there and they're not going to leave. They're not going to leave. Who wants to not work for Mary? What are you telling me?
Also, Mary's got a gun.
No, that doesn't hurt.
Well, you're going to be around for a few minutes, right? Thank you very much. I can see why you're very successful. Thank you very much.